2011, a civil war uproared through the once tranquil streets of Syria. Wanting to break free from President Bashar al-Assad's tyrannical and oppressive rule, defectors of the military formed the now called Free Syrian Army to fight back. War tore across the peaceful streets of Syria, leaving citizens in the midst of combat. With the war entering its sixth year, over 5 million Syrian citizens have abandoned their nationality in hopes of seeking refuge and finding peace in other countries. The case of Syrian refugees is just one of the many. Similar cases of war throughout Afghanistan, Iraq, and South Sudan has also led to a plethora of asylum seekers fleeing from one country to another, seeking protection and refuge. As refugees move in and about neighboring countries, globalization unintentionally occurs, and the globalization of refugees throughout Germany is a great example of globalization, as it shows that globalization does not always result in positive consequences. This video will mainly focus on the negative socioeconomic impacts of the globalization of refugees in Germany. In 2015, as tensions of the Syrian civil war heightened and more asylum seekers were fleeing the country, Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, declared an open-door policy in Germany. While a great humanitarian deed, the haphazard policy led to drastic consequences in both views in economy and the everyday life of a German citizen. Due to Chancellor Merkel's open-door policy, Germany became a refugee utopia. This led to Germany housing roughly 745,600 refugees in 2016 alone. The overwhelming and unexpected amount of refugees in Germany led to, also, an overwhelming and unexpected amount of economic burdens. Due to the overflowing amount of refugees in Germany, financially sustaining them has increasingly become a problem. In an interview with Ian Golden, a professor of globalization and development at Oxford University, Golden stated that refugee arrivals this year will generate cost about 10 billion, rising to 20 billion by 2020. Although mocked when first said, his calculations were precise. The cost of migration-related issues, application processes, nourishment, temporary housing, and healthcare services for the refugees totaled up to 10 million euros, far more than the original budget of the state governments. The cost has only increased from then. Although Golden predicted a cost of 20 billion by 2020, in 2016 alone, Germany had spent a whopping 23 billion euros, 6 billion more than the government's original prediction. Berlin, with their original budget of 685 million euros for accommodation, unaccompanied minors, healthcare, interrogation programs, and language lessons, had spent 1.3 billion by the end of the year, nearly double their budget. Bavaria alone had spent 3.3 billion, Hesse 1.6 billion, and Schleswig-Holstein 780 million, and roughly 15 billion for the rest of the federal states of Germany. The situation of the financial burden has reached to such a high point that a program called Start Life Plus has been implemented in hopes to reduce refugee numbers in Germany. Start Life Plus offers 1,200 euros for refugees who decide to leave Germany and withdraw their refugee application. The maker of Start Life Plus, Mr. D. Maziere, quotes, "I appeal to understanding and reason. For all those who have no prospect in staying in Germany, voluntarily departure represents a better way than deportation. However, the project was criticized by itself, quote, with very poor chances of success under the country's current asylum laws." Another negative aspect of the influx of refugees in Germany are its social impacts on the citizens of Germany. Many communities say that there are currently too many refugees in Germany, and that they are bringing negative influences with not enough positive contributions. The people of these communities, however, are afraid to voice their opinions in fear of being labeled as a racist, fascist, or a Nazi. A study by the Bertelsmann Foundation found that 54% of the subjects were against any more refugees entering Germany, with one subject commenting, "Many feel that the maximum limit has already been reached." One local man comments, "There are too many immigrants." Data from 13 of 16 federal states of Germany concluded that a total of 208,344 crimes related to refugees happened in 2016, 85,000 of which being theft, 52,000 cases of forged paperwork, and 240 attempted murders. In 2016, there has been 1,688 cases of sexual assault by refugees in Germany, 458 cases of which rape was involved. As the amount of refugees in Germany has increased by 440% from 2014 to 2015, the rate of crime committed by refugees has increased by 79%. The most infamous incident in 2016 was the Cologne attack, where 1,000 women were rounded and sexually assaulted, allegedly done by a group of multiple refugees. A victim, 18-year-old Michelle, says, "At first, we thought it was a joke, but after a while they didn't stop. They were touching us wherever they could." Although it would be generalizing that all refugees commit crime, many Germans feel uneasy with the current amount of refugees. Anti-refugee has, in recent years, become a political standpoint for many right-wing parties and is currently gaining popularity amongst the voters of Germany because of these incidents. The first source will be the statistics report on the Syrian refugees by UNHCR. These statistics are a primary source as they were collected by the UNHCR themselves. These statistics are relevant as they are reporting the progress in 2017 and the last update was in October 12, 2017. These statistics are unbiased and has no public statements, nor are there any of these statistics used to prove a point. Oh, that was messed up grammar. It's okay. Its contents is useful as it tells us how many Syrian refugees there are, UNHCR's funding, demographics, and more. The only limitation, if any, is that it does not show how the statistics were collected. The second source is an official governmental document discussing the rights and status of a refugee called the Convention and Protocol Relating to the Status of Refugees. This, too, is a primary source and was published via the UNHCR. The document was created in 1951, but is still relevant as all refugee protocols to this date goes by this very document. This document has no bias as it is literally just instructions on how to deal with refugees, their rights, and the housing country's duties. This document states the rights and refugees of duties. The duties of refugees, along with the rights and duties of the corresponding country. This information was useful in to further understand the duties Germany had to address the refugees with. Aside from the document being over 60 years old, there are no limitations to this source. So how is the UN addressing this issue of the current refugee crisis? UN Subdivision, the UNHCR, was created in 1951 to exercise two principal functions: to provide international protection to refugees and to seek durable solutions for them in cooperation with governments. The term refugee was narrowly defined by the UNHCR at the 1951 Refugee Convention as a person owing to a well-rounded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion is outside of the country of his nationality and is unable, or owing to such fear, is unwilling to avail himself of the protection of that country, or who, not having a nationality and being outside of the country of his former habitual residence, as a result of such events, is unable, or owing to such fear, is unwilling to return to it. This means that a refugee is a person who is abandoning their current nationality due to a certain fear in hopes of finding security in a neighboring country. The UNHCR itself is in a bit of a twist, as the UNHCR itself is not a country and thus cannot house refugees themselves. Instead, they create UNHCR-led refugee camps in countries closest to Syria. Currently, the UNHCR has not been able to provide much of the needed support. Out of the 5.2 million Syrian refugees, the UNHCR has only organized camps housing 460,000 refugees, only 7% of the refugees in need, and with only 38% of the needed $406 billion in funds for 2017, it is increasingly harder for them to financially fund the camps. Instead of helping with materialistic aid, the UNHCR helps through logistical support. This includes helping documenting, organizing, transporting the refugees to other camps or countries. The UNHCR also is in a tight spot in aiding Germany with their current situation. Currently, the UNHCR camps are on the verge of being overcrowded with a finite amount of resources they have. The UNHCR simply has no spare resources to aid Germany at the moment and also in the foreseeable future. The easiest solution, although not the simplest, would be to stop the conflict in Syria and bring back the citizens to their rightful country. However, with the Syrian war entering its 6th year, an absolvement in the conflict seems intangible in current situations.
Music is a world within itself.